Hello, welcome to the Comic Book Commentary. I'm Bo Leidig, and this week we're going to be diving back into the interstellar war drama from Radical Comics with Shrapnel Aristeia Rising #2. So let's zoom in and take a closer look. First published in February of 2009, there are two covers for this book. Unfortunately, I have but one, so that's the one we're looking at today, obviously. I actually like this cover quite a bit, though. It's very telling of the story. We see a lone soldier gazing out over the space colony, which is experiencing explosions, plus you see the, weird chemical sky of Venus. It's a really cool image. The other image is more of a take on a propaganda poster of like, hey, support the war effort, support the troops type of thing. It's cool looking, and if I ever find it, I'll be sure to buy it. Creators, Mark Long and Nick Sagan. Writer, M. Zachary Sherman. Artist, Bagus Hamoto. Colorist, I'm gonna butcher this, Leos Okita Ing. I'm really sorry because I know I got that wrong. Letters, Sean Kanat. Editor, Jim Dimonakos. We can see here on the first page, this is the other cover I was talking about. I don't know how well it's showing up on camera. It looks good. The only thing that's a little bit weird about it is it's assumed that the woman depicted on this cover is in fact Samantha, who at the time of this book had not fully joined into the fight for Venus. We saw at the end of the first issue that she was retreating from the planet, leaving the colonists to fight this war on their own, as she believed they could never win. Also, if you haven't watched my video on episode number 1, or on issue number 1, I should say, I suggest you do, as this is a continuous self-contained narrative that's a mini-series, so the story is going to be hard to follow if you're not watching it in order. As I stated, this comic is picking up exactly where the last comic left off. We see Jammer and Stapp's unit is facing a large mech of some sort, and they're pretty well screwed at this point under the belief that they're most likely going to die when they notice a spacecraft coming in through the atmosphere. As it careens downward towards the surface of the planet, it unleashes two rocket-propelled harpoons, it looks like. They have some sort of cables behind them that shoot down directly into the mech. The men are surprised to see this, and then as they begin to take cover, the mech explodes as the ship which shot it also crash lands on the surface of the planet, unable to pull up from the dive that it was in. Not knowing what to make of what they've just witnessed, the men decide to rush toward the downed ship to see if the pilot is still alive. And as they make it to the cockpit, they're surprised that the pilot is seemingly okay, but also they're surprised at the fact that the pilot is in fact their friend Samantha, who doesn't even exchange any pleasantries at all. She simply states, "What's the sit rep?" grabs a gun from a fallen soldier and starts ordering the men to find cover, spread out, stay 5 meters apart. And as they get behind some rock outcroppings, she tells them to hold their fire and wait for the enemy to get in closer. The men are a bit worried about this as they're approaching quickly, but she says that they need to hold fast. She also tells them that it should only take one shot for each one of the Marines that they're fighting against, stating that they need to aim for the folds in the armor, as those are the weak points. She then commands them all to fire. As they open fire, they begin taking out several of the enemy troops that are bombarding them, and she's showing to her friends that she knows a lot more about how to do this than either one of them, and that she's also been hiding some stuff from them as she's been living amongst them on Venus. As we see the approaching Marines getting lit up by the colonist fire, they continue to drop as we see a large explosion hit one of the colonists in the shoulder. This breaks open his visor as we see his face. He's hurting, and this was the commander of the squadron. He stands up and looks at Samantha and says, I know who you are. I need you to take command of these men." Samantha is very reluctant to do this, but He then states, "Do you want to die?" She says, "No, sir." And then he gives her the order to get them back to General Roland and tell him that he sent them there and let them know what's going on. Uh, this is kind of funny to me a little bit in the sense that I don't believe that humans can actually breathe the atmosphere of Venus. And this guy should most likely be dead, but who knows? Maybe they've terraformed the planet to a degree and it's not instant death when your helmet gets broken open like this. Sam wastes no time in jumping to her feet and commanding the other members of the squad to get on her back. They're retreating. They ask about the commander, but he says he's going to cover them. The commander continues to fire into the Marines as they charge forward, taking them out until he eventually exhausts his ammo supply. He realizes that he's screwed as the Marines get up on him and state to stay down and drop his weapon, that this is over, they're taking him as prisoner. But the commander has another idea that he plans on executing before that can happen. As the commander begins to get to his feet, he holds up a grenade in his hand and simply states, "Merry Christmas, Jarheads," as the grenade goes off, killing the commander and the Marines that were surrounding him. Samantha, Jammer, and Stapp are able to get away. Sam asks who this General Roland is, and she's told that he's the one in charge of this entire operation. She immediately criticizes him and says that this is a ridiculous way to go about this battle, and that she needs to get to the command center ASAP. Back at the mobile command center, we see that the general is barking orders. He's telling his men where they need to move troops to. They're informing him about casualties on the battlefield. When he's interrupted when Sam, Jammer, and Stapp enter the mobile command center, and she states that he needs to hand over command of this battle to her. He, of course, scoffs at the idea and states that he's got the situation under control, but she immediately continues to criticize his phalanx strategy, saying that it's an all or nothing battle tactic, and that, you know, if at any point part of their ranks collapse, all is lost. He tries to argue back, though, stating that they're in an all or nothing type of situation and that they need to end the battle here. But she continues to try and persuade him to, you know, win this battle and then set up a new plan of attack or defense that's more favorable to the outcome that they need, stating that, you know, this is not going to be ended in a single decisive battle. When suddenly their conversation is interrupted when one of the other men in the command center states that the Marines are retreating. The general immediately states that they need to pursue the retreating Marines. However, Sam interjects saying, you know, no, this is a trap. This is something that's going to get all of your forces killed. He dismisses her and says that they've got the Marines on the run, and what does she know about this anyway? But she finally reluctantly states that the reason she knows this is a trap is because it's something that they used to do all the time when they had the enemy in a position to draw them out into the open. Everyone suddenly stops and looks at her, and the general asks, "Who is this woman?" And Jammer states, "I'm not really sure I know anymore." The general decides that he's not going to listen to Sam and gathers his troops as they begin to make their way towards the battlefield so that they can pursue the retreating Marines. This, of course, is something that Sam thinks is nothing more than a suicidal battle tactic, as she states that he's going to get everyone killed. She turns back into the command center, and Jammer is starting to question her and exactly what's going on and who she really is, stating that, you know, she's been lying to him this whole time. She states that, you know, everybody's got secrets. He says, you know, but I thought we had something. She's immediately pissed off when he says this and, you know, is like, this is not the time or the place. She then moves to one of the communications operatives in the command center and tells him to radio out to the entire division that the dead commander was in charge of and tell them all that she is now in control and that they need to meet up at one of the points on the battlefield ASAP, and then yells at another low-ranking officer to get her an exosuit, as they need to get together and figure out a way that they can keep the general and the rest of the troops from being slaughtered. They then make their way out towards the battlefield, and Sam basically just tells Jammer and Stapp that for the time being, they need to just trust her. We then are shown back at the battlefield where the general is making his way down a canyon with some of his troops, along with some mechs. This is a large force, and if this force is wiped out, it's pretty much the end of the colony. And of course, like Samantha said, the Marines are waiting for them up around the walls of the canyon. It is surprising that the general wouldn't have seen that this was a trap. One of the Marines just says, "Wait for it," and then suddenly says, "Engage," as they open fire. Chaos immediately erupts inside of the canyon as we see explosions taking out multiple mech suits. Also, the colonists are being slaughtered as we see many of them falling, having holes blown directly through their armor, or them being split in half. Things are looking pretty bad. However, it's not all lost, as Samantha has shown up with the other division and is getting prepared to flank the Marines. She barks out some orders saying, stay in groups of 2, don't bunch up, and what the hell are you all waiting for? Get in there and start fighting, as they unleash an explosion in the middle of the Marines' ranks. Her forces begin to charge in. The general is surprised and states, who the heck is this woman? His subordinate says, "I'm not sure, but she definitely seems to know what she's doing," as her forces continue to move forward and advance on the Marines and begin turning the tide of this battle. The general, realizing that this is their opportunity, tells his men to push forward and to continue fighting. He states that, they have to hold the line. They can't lose ground here. He continues to tell them to move forward, as we see the Marines believing that they're in some real trouble now as they're facing a 2-pronged attack. They state that they have to fall back to Rally Point Alpha, as we see Sam and her forces running forward as she screams, "Push." She gets to the general, who, by the way, was hit by a round directly in one of the weak points of his armor. He's severely injured. She grabs him and states, "I tried to tell you, sir." He, however, realizes that his injuries are far too great and that he's about to die. He tells Samantha that she has to take control of this military force. She, of course, doesn't want to, but he states it's the only way that Venus has a chance of maintaining its independence, and that if she doesn't, everyone will certainly die as he passes away. She looks down at him, angry and upset that he's died. She starts yelling no, because she realizes that he's in fact right, and despite her best efforts to try and leave all this behind her, she cares too much about her friends and the people of Venus to abandon them, and it's now her responsibility to lead them into battle against the Marines. As the Marines all fall back to their rally point, they continue to fight on, but Sam realizes that they've put themselves in a precarious spot as she makes her way up to one of the higher points that the colonists have been able to secure, and finds a mortar team. She tells them new coordinates to fire at. They start to protest, saying that that's going to go way past the Marines, but she says just do it. They unleash a single shot, which goes well over the Marines and hits the rock wall behind them. However, this is to the benefit of the colonists, as apparently there was a frozen lake on the other side of that rock wall, and now with the rocks gone, the lake is draining into their rally point, covering their entire force with rock and ice and water, as they're all being washed away and killed by the ensuing avalanche. This puts a decisive end to this battle, as we see all of the colonist forces begin to celebrate. However, Samantha says we better get back, because this is only the beginning, as she looks out around the battlefield and sees all the casualties and carnage behind her. We then see her and Jammer embracing in a kiss back at the colony, as they're getting all of their equipment and fallen dead back into a large hangar. We see a news report where the president of the colony is basically telling everyone that, he's proud of the way they fought today, and despite the fact that they lost many friends and loved ones, they have to keep fighting for the memories of those people and to keep Venus free. And that while this battle was won by them on this day, this war is far from over. As all of the troops are trying to get out of their gear and get cleaned up, Stapp and Jammer are in a bit of an argument, as Stapp seems to believe that they can't trust Samantha and they don't know anything about her. And Jammer states that while he agrees that she's been lying to them, she did just help save all of them, and that if she hadn't showed up, they'd be dead right now. Stapp gets angry, grabs Jammer by the shirt, and basically is just like, she's a Marine, she's a killer. How many people of ours has she killed? And, Jammer's like, I don't know any of that. He's like, but, all of us have secrets. He's like, for instance, why did you leave Mercury? Stapp starts to say, hey, it's none of your business. And Jammer's like, yeah, just like her backstory is none of our business. Stop judging her for, basically doing the same thing to you that you've done to all of us. But Sam is overhearing all of this as she enters the room and states that Stapp is right. She hasn't been honest with them and they can ask whatever questions they want. So Jammer decides to ask, who are you really? At this point is when Sam tells them that her name is not Samantha Vijaya. Her name is Vijaya Naraya. And that she was a former commander in the Marine Expeditionary Force, and that she was stationed on Odessa. That's something that, basically stops Jammer in his tracks as Stapp asks what that was. And, Jammer says that Odessa was a colony in which the Helots, also, if you've forgotten, that's a whole other subplot point in this story, that there are genetically engineered humans and then there are natural born humans, and that the natural born humans tend to be the targeted in terms of classist society, or I guess, I wouldn't call it racism because they're all human beings and it has nothing to do with, individual skin color or anything along those lines. It's more of a classism type of thing where those who are genetically engineered feel that they are superior to those who are just naturally born people. But Jammer states that the Helots on Odessa had revolted against the colony and also the Marines and were protesting and had taken control of the spaceport on Odessa. And instead of concede victory, the Marines decided to blow the hatch on the spaceport, which sucked all of the Helot colonists out into the vacuum, killing hundreds. And the Marines just stood by and watched and offered no help to any of them. However, Sam begins to protest and state that, that's not how things happened, but Jammer's not really in the mood for that. In a fit of rage, Jammer grabs Sam by the throat and slams her against the wall, ready to punch her directly in the face, and calls her a butcher, stating, you can tell us whatever lies you want, but I'm not going to stand for you sullying the name of the dead who were all killed on that day with your version of history. She just yells out his name, but he says, you lied to us, you lied to me, as he says, you were responsible, and he punches the wall next to her head. He also states that, she knew that he had lost loved ones that day and she kept it from him anyway. And this is something that's really difficult for Jammer to deal with, as the two of them were involved intimately, and he feels incredibly betrayed by the fact that, she would keep such a secret from him. She tries to calm him down, stating that we're all running for something. And he just says, yeah, well, tell someone else about it, who cares? She yells at him, calling him a son of a bitch and stating that, this is about a lot more than just him, but he ignores her and walks off. She then turns to Stapp and tells him to gather the rest of the forces all into Hangar 8, as she wants to address them as a unit. Meanwhile, in the orbit of Mars, we are shown the ASF Mifu, which is the command ship for the Marines, as we see transport ships moving toward it to land in the hangar. Battle footage is then handed off to one of the colonels, and he starts to review it, not liking what he's seeing. Of course, this is the same colonel that we met in issue number 1, as he was the one who offered the peaceful surrender option towards the colony, and they subsequently rejected. As he continues to watch the footage, he is very disturbed by this unknown soldier who is now in command of the colonist forces, as he realizes that whoever this soldier is, they have a deep-seated knowledge of all of the Marines' battle tactics and strategies. We then later see him inside of the war room talking to the War Council, explaining that, General Roland could not have possibly pulled this off on his own. The general that we saw die, who was in charge of the colonist forces, he states that Roland was, coming from Jupiter and would have never seen this kind of action or any of these kinds of tactics. One of the War Council says then, so they have some kind of an ace up their sleeve. But what the colonel tells them is that he believes it's deeper than just that. He believes that whoever this mystery man, as he calls him, is a former Marine and knows exactly what their tactics are and knows exactly how to mount a counteroffensive against them. One of the other women in the War Council states that, they did a deep intel dive on every single colonist, and there's not a single person who was on the surface of Venus who was in the ranks of the Marines at any point. The colonel, however, rebuts that apparently they missed something, because it's impossible that any random colonist would have been able to take over the battlefield and disperse the Marines the way that this mystery soldier did. He then states to the woman, whose name is Madame Estep, and the rest of the men in the War Council that from what he saw today, they're going to fight until the very last man. She then states, oh, well, let them die. But the colonel turns around and states, you were misunderstanding my words. I didn't mean the colonists. I was talking about our soldiers. Because from what I've seen today, this commander is more than equipped to really prolong this battle and cause incredibly heavy casualties on both sides. And that also we're supposed to be here on a mission to unite the entire galaxy under one banner, not just go in and commit a genocide. One of the other men in the War Council, who seems to outrank Madame Estep, states that he agrees with the colonel, that they're supposed to be liberators. He then tells the colonel to make his way back towards Venus and try to speak with this new commander and make him understand that they do not want to exercise the full extent of their military might and that they want to find a peaceful solution to this. However, the colonel tells him that he's not certain that this new commander is willing to, accept the option that they're going to lay down on the table from what he saw in all of the battlefield footage. He believes that this commander is more than willing to put up a serious fight, and that if they underestimate them again, that this is going to be the bloodiest battle that mankind has seen in centuries. And he states that, if things go poorly for the Marines, they're going to wind up having to, come back perhaps the losers and not be able to unite the galaxy, and that this could be a real problem for them going forward, as we see the story is to be continued. On the next page, we see advertisements for more radical books. Obviously, Shrapnel Aristeia Rising number 3, which will once again have at least 2 covers. I can't remember if I have both of them, but I would assume I probably don't. And also Hotwire, Requiem for the Dead. I don't think I have any issues of Hotwire. I'm going to have to see if I can find these sometime. Again, it's a mini-series type of format, the same that all of the Radical series were. But it seems kind of interesting, and, all of them honestly seem kind of interesting in terms of, the stories that Radical was putting out. And I would really like to see what Hotwire was all about. We then get a letter from the publisher who is giving a rundown of, basically what their goals are at Radical and, what you can expect to see from them in the future. It's just a cool little, here's what we've got coming out. Sort of similar to all the image info that we've seen throughout so many other videos. It's the same kind of idea. We then see an advertisement for Charlie and Flytrap, which I don't recall ever seeing an issue of this anywhere. I'm very intrigued as to what exactly this is about, as there's some sort of, I don't know, crazy protest going on, and there's someone in the back who's getting crucified, and then there's a guy with guns riding on top of a giant monster dude. This looks wild as hell, and I would very much like to figure out exactly what this comic was all about. On the last page of the book, we see an advertisement for City of Dust, which was kind of a horror sci-fi type of comic. I think I might have one issue of this. It was intriguing, but I wasn't able to find any more of it. We then, on the reverse inside cover, get an advertisement for Hercules, the Thracian Wars, and Caliber in their collected trade papers. I actually have all of Hercules, the Thracian Wars, and we'll be making videos about that in the future. Caliber, again, I think I have like one issue of Caliber, which is unfortunate because I would like to get more. I like Caliber a lot. It's a cool concept. And if I can, hunt down the rest of the issues, I'll definitely be making videos about that in the future. And that was Shrapnel Aristeia Rising #2. All in all, I liked this issue a lot. I thought it did a great job of progressing the story. Obviously you have the main plot of the battle between the Earth Force Marines versus the Venetian colonists. But then you also have the subplots of, the societal class imbalance between, the genetically modified humans and the natural born humans. You also have the subplots of Samantha and Jammer being at odds with each other, and everyone having to deal with the fact that she's been lying to everyone through this whole time as she was trying to escape her whole life as a Marine and just live in a quiet part of the galaxy where, she could be, left to her own devices and pursue the type of future and life that she actually wanted. And, her having to deal with the fact that she's now been thrust back into what she was trying to escape. My only real complaint about the book is not really a complaint so much about anything specific with the artwork, because I actually love Hutomo's artwork. It's the presentation. There are a lot of times reading this book that it is very difficult to follow what is happening because of how chaotic the art style becomes in the way that it's presented. And, the panels are not always super clearly defined in what order you're supposed to be looking at them. And even if you know what order you're looking at them, you can't always distinguish exactly what's being portrayed in each panel. Now, to be fair, it's entirely possible that he did this on purpose to try and give a visual representation of the chaos of a battlefield, which I understand. However, it still needs to be something that we as the readers can follow and, comprehend easily in terms of, the storytelling aspect that the art has to achieve. And I feel like the artwork kind of falls flat on that in some instances, just because it is so chaotic and so difficult to follow at certain points. But these are just my opinions. Your opinions may be completely different. You might have thought all of that was perfect and that this issue couldn't have been any better. And if so, that's okay, because everyone's entitled to their own opinions. If you enjoyed today's video, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. And thanks for stopping by. Have a great day.